This video was brought to you by Dashlane. Welcome back guys to Voicey here and another r/MaliciousCompliance, where it helps to always be a nice neighbor because you never know when one day they'll maliciously comply, and it'll end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars. Don't forget Voicey veterans to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story was called I Know the Rules, Do You? A little backstory. This happened years ago while I was working in retail. I had been at this place for 3 years, was cross-trained in every department, had never had a sick day, and was always available to cover shifts when they called me. The important thing to say is that we were also unionized. I would soon be getting married and moving across the country, so being the good employee I was, I gave my store manager my termination notice a month before my last day, instead of just 2 weeks, so we'd have plenty of time to hire someone new. Here is the good part. A few days after I turned in my notice, I broke my foot in an act of stupidity. Doctor gave me some pain meds and a note saying I could continue work as a cashier as long as I had a stool or something I could help keep the weight off my foot. The next day I grabbed my cane and walked to work with my note. I explained the situation to my supervisor and union rep, and they pull a bar stool from the furniture section and put it at my cash booth. I spend the day working without a problem. The next day my store manager sees me sitting on my stool and calls me into his office. I go in and he wants to know why I have a stool. The conversation goes roughly as follows. Why are you sitting down on shift? Because I broke my foot and the doctor says I cannot be standing on it all day. I have the note and the union's approval. Manager looks over to the note and notices the cane beside my chair. I can't let you keep the stool. If we did, we'd have to make accommodations for everyone who got injured outside of working hours. Plus, it doesn't look professional to have you sitting at the front of the store. Now I know he isn't allowed to do that, and that I could have taken this up with the union and won the case. But with only 3 weeks left with the company, I would have been lucky if it resolved before I left. So, I get a bright idea. Okay, I'll make you a deal instead of bringing this to the union. I'll give up the stool, but in return, you need to make sure that every shift I work from now on is as the garden center cashier. My manager quickly agrees and thanks me for being understanding. He walks with me out to the garden center and explains to the current cashier that I'll be taking over for the rest of the month. Now, being unionized is not always a great thing, but if you know the rules, you can get away with a lot without being fired. With my union, the key was to do exactly what was in your job description, so long as it didn't put you, your coworkers, or the company at risk. Since most of us liked our jobs and respected the store owner, not the manager, we always went above and beyond. But I was on my way out, and after my talk with the manager, I no longer cared. A few days later, manager comes out to let the supervisor know that a shipment of flowers will be arriving sometime today. He apparently decided to check up on me and was completely speechless when he saw me. There I was, sitting on my register's counter, reading a book. What on earth are you doing? Waiting for the next customer to come up while taking the weight off my foot. Why? You know I could have you fired for doing this, right? My job is to be a cashier, which I'm doing whenever someone comes up. There are no additional duties like cleaning or stocking for the garden center cashier. So between customers, I'm taking the weight off my foot as per my doctor's note. Minus the stool, of course. I could still fire you for reading on the sales floor. Please do. Since I've never received a warning or been written up, that would mean you are firing me for a first offense, which is not sufficient cause for the union. That would mean that you would owe me 5 weeks severance, my unclaimed vacation time, and the pay I would miss between now and my final day. Now, you could also spend the next 2 weeks trying to catch me reading. That way you could issue me the required 3 warnings, followed by the required 3 write-ups. But that would eat up a lot of your time. And I'm pretty sure I could have someone inside call to warn me if they see you coming this way. At this point, a man with a cart full of bags and dirt starts heading my way, and I hop off the register onto my good foot and hop around the register so I can serve him. Manager never came to see me again. It just goes to show you that if you know the rules, and you follow the rules strictly, you can get away with a lot, can't you? In this case, I wouldn't even say that they were trying to do something bad. It's not like they were trying to be lazy. They were even going into work with a broken foot, as they were just about to finish up at the workplace. It's like, dude, really? He can't even have a stool for his broken foot? This story was called Neighbor Tells Gramps He Should Mind His Own Darn Business. That advice cost neighbor most of his yard and a car. Gramps had just moved into a retirement park with a lot that backed up onto county land that was a nature preserve. His backyard was basically non-existent, but he didn't mind. as he got to look out over the preserve. However, he did marvel at how his next door neighbor's backyard extended a good 8 feet past his, giving neighbor a nice space back there. Gramps tried to be friendly with all his new neighbors, exchanging phone numbers and the like, and one day he noticed the next door neighbor was putting down expensive pavers that extended from his back door all the way to the old fence post that designated the preserve boundary. Gramps watched the neighbor yank the 3 rickety fence posts out of the ground and move them back an extra 2 feet into the preserve before pounding them back in, then started to clear the land, intending to gain himself more area for his pavers. Gramps used to work for the National Park Services as a young lad, so he thought he'd better warn the neighbor of the consequences of his actions. So he heads out back for a little chat. Neighbor is immediately defensive, and before Gramps says much, neighbor tells him, "You're new here, I've been here 10 years, and mind your own darn business." Gramps decides not to press the issue. Nothing happens that year, but the following year, when most of the park emptied out to head north for the summer, the county comes by to check on the preserve. Gramps notices them going back and forth behind his neighbor's house. The workers are pulling out maps and taking photos and making phone calls, and soon more guys show up. Turns out, neighbor has moved the posts several times over the years, and in reality, his backyard is supposed to be even smaller than Gramps' backyard. To make it worse, neighbor put pavers in the backyard specifically to park both his golf cart and a cherry red sports car back there for the summer, so the county will have to move them before they can do anything else. They tape a notice to the front door and leave. Gramps goes over to read it, and it states that neighbor was in violation of encroaching onto protected lands. He has 30 days to move his car, tear up the pavers, and pay a fine of $11,000 because of damage to endangered species who inhabit the protected lands, as well as trespassing fees. Failure to do so within 30 days will result in golf cart and car being towed and impounded. Pavers will be dug up and carted off at neighbor's expense, and the fine will be increased for every additional day past the deadline. 30 days comes and goes, so a week after that, Gramp has quite the show, as first the car and then the cart were towed. Pavers were dug up and hauled off, and the old fence posts and ropes were replaced with metal posts embedded into buried cement bases, connected by steel cables. The whole process took several weeks to finish, but the preserve looked a lot more legit when they were done. A few solar cameras were installed so the county could monitor the wildlife and encroachers remotely. Meanwhile, more notices were taped to the front door of the neighbor's house. By November, the snowbirds were flooding back into the park, including the neighbor. That was Gramps' second show of the summer, as neighbor reads all the notices, digging down until he reads the first one, then runs out back and starts screaming and cussing up a storm, before running back to his car to dig out his cell phone, so he can call the county to find out where his car and golf cart were. Gramps stays indoors to avoid the guy, as he is frantically trying to unload his car, turn on his water and electricity, get the AC and the toilets going, and all the while trying to get someone at county to pick up the phone and give him some answers. He finally gets a live person and proceeds to scream at them while on speakerphone about his car and cart. So the call keeps getting kicked to other people because who wants to help a screamer? Basically, neighbor is told to come to the county office to get this straightened out. 3 days later, neighbor catches Gramps outside and asks if he was here when the county stole his car and destroyed his backyard. Gramps said he was, and the neighbor says, "Well, why didn't you call me when you saw them putting notices on my door? You had my phone number up north." Gramps said that he had thought about doing that, but figured neighbor would prefer him to mind his own darn business. So he decided against it. It's a pretty ballsy move to increase your yard by more than 8 feet onto a preserve with endangered species. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Sometimes you meet people like this, but you never get to be in Gramps' position. He tried to warn him, but was told to mind his own business, so that's exactly what he did. And he got the show of a lifetime. This story was called "Want to Know My Every Move but Don't Want to Respect My Craft? Enjoy these 50 emails a day from someone who does." I recently started a senior cybersecurity position about 2 months ago for a global, publicly traded company. Over the past 2 months, I've been trying to learn the landscape of the company and alerting my boss of any potential risks. Call it an initial risk assessment. I report to the CISO, but I work with all the IT, app dev, and business users. Whenever I find a potential risk, vulnerability, or loophole, I try to eliminate it by finding as much information, because there may be something I don't know or someone I haven't spoken to who is handling it. Because my company is spread out all over the world, all our teams are also spread out. The director of IT infrastructure sits in Europe, while my office is in the US. Let's just say this guy is a total control freak, but like I said, I don't work for him. 5 guys who do work for him, however, are in the same office I am, so I just go to these guys to ask for information I need to make my assessment, and then I escalate to my boss, who immediately orders remediation of risks that I find, i.e. orders the Europe guy to fix crap. This guy doesn't like it very much, so he calls me. Conversation went something like this. Hacker is me, and CF is control freak. Hey hacker, you need to think about who your job will impact before you create work for people. I don't like being blindsided. Fair enough. That's why I try and make sure to cover all grounds before I make proposals for remediation. If there's information you seek, talk to me first because you talk to my team. If it's a real risk, we'll find it without need for escalation. Fair enough. I'll give that method a try if that's what you want. The problem with this new relationship is this guy is too busy and gets too many emails which he can't keep up with, believes he runs a tight ship and cannot get hacked. I also told my boss about this conversation and he asked me to play along but copy him in all my emails. Fast forward a couple weeks. Control Freak has dismissed every single issue I brought up, or sometimes just completely didn't reply because too busy for emails. So I did what any hacker would do. With permission from management, I hacked my way up to a domain controller, got some other admin accounts along the way. I did this over and over, taking different paths each time, including hacking devices we use in our conference rooms, which he claims are locked out. He or his team had no clue any of this happened, even though I performed the hacks from a non-image external computer on a VPN. I submitted a pen test report to my boss, itemized all the techniques I had used and all the vulnerabilities I exploited. Vulnerabilities which I had mentioned to CF, but he dismissed out of hand. So my boss escalates to the CIO, who is CF's boss's boss. Anyways, crap rolls down from the ceiling. CF was livid. He was ordered to start a new project with allocated team and resources to follow up on my report, but not before we got on another call. Why you do what you do? English is not his first language. I told you this crap is real. It's what I'm hired to do. Find loopholes like this. But why you no tell me? I did tell you. You said it's not a real risk. Okay, but you can please let me know anything you're doing that concerns my team. At all times. He was begging. Okay. Problem was, CF's boss had also asked to be copied on every email I sent to CF, as has my boss. So now when I send him one email, he gets 3 from his boss asking him what his plan is, and 2 from my boss telling him why it's important. Also, whenever I need information from someone on his team, I have to copy him, which also means I have to copy his boss and my boss. It's a mess, and I realize it's a bad start to an otherwise great company. For someone who hates emails because he gets too much of them, he now gets almost 50 a day from or about me that he has to respond to. On the flip side, we are sort of becoming friends now, and he's working with me more and respecting my trade. So there's that. Maybe if I pass on good comments about him, we can go back to working directly without involving our bosses. I think what it comes down to is respecting his trade, like he said. He's there specifically for cybersecurity reasons because he knows his stuff. He knows the risks that are out there. Well, for some people, they learn the hard way. Doesn't always cost them money, but it might cost them a lot of time and effort and stress. It's so much better that he hacked the company first to find out its vulnerabilities than somebody outside who would have used it against them. And if cybersecurity is something you're worried about, you can get a password manager and VPN combined with Dashlane. Dashlane makes the internet way faster and more fun. How often are you ready to buy something but you don't have your credit card handy? Dashlane means you never have to have your credit card on you. How often do you forget or reset your password? You'll never forget or reset a password again with Dashlane. For anything that requires filling out forms online, from checkouts to taxes, from buying airline tickets to applying for a job, Dashlane has you covered with one-click autofill. It also works across all devices and browsers, So wherever you go, your passwords go with you. Try Dashlane for free on your first device by heading to dashlane.com/VoiceyHere. This story was called "You Are Not Allowed to Drive That Car." This malicious act of compliance is still ongoing. For some context, I'm a university student who's living on my parents' couch for the next 2 weeks before I move back to my school's town. They are currently redoing their pool, with employees working Monday to Friday. I pay my own rent at a room near my university, so I signed up for a clinical trial to take off the added burden of paying for my expensive medicine while getting some grocery money at the same time. I had an appointment early this morning for the trial, and so I told my mum about it last night. She immediately disapproved, stating that she didn't want me to be a guinea pig for money. So she woke up before me and took my car out so I couldn't drive it. The only other car in the driveway is her big truck, which I'm uncomfortable driving, but I'll do it if I have to. So I called her and told her that because she took my car, I'll be driving her truck to the appointment instead. She of course flipped her lid and screamed at me about being a sellout. Y'all, I'm just trying to get some grocery money here. My mum also made it clear that she has her own plans and won't be back with my car until later today. She then ended the call saying that I am, in no circumstances, allowed to drive her car. Fine. Whatever. I rescheduled my appointment and went back to the couch to try to sleep, when the pool workers showed up. They have a huge concrete truck that can only be used when the driveway is empty, but my mum's car is of course plopped in the middle of it. So they can't start working until my mum's truck is moved out of the driveway, and with no one else home, this means that I'm the only one who can do it. Oh, except for the fact that I am in no circumstances allowed to drive her car. Whoops. I could understand being a parent and being concerned for your kid going to some sort of test or trial, but I'm pretty sure most of those are pretty relatively safe. Plus, if she needs the money for groceries, a pretty basic human need, pretty sure she has the right to make that decision for herself. She's a university student, not in high school. If you're concerned with your kid doing something that you don't like for money, maybe try and work out with them some other alternatives rather than just making the decision for them. Post your stories, memes, and fan art at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.